much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.
Good afternoon. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II, and I'd like to welcome you back to Not on My Watch. As always, I'd like to ask you to subscribe, like, comment, and share. I want you to retweet this and repeat this. If you're watching, it is Wednesday, October 11th, 2017, and I'd like to say happy National Coming Out Day. So if you are a member of the LGBTQIA community, this is your day to shine. Hopefully, those in your life who love you will continue to love and accept you the way that you are. Now, moving into the news cycle for today. Last night at the BET Awards, I think it was the BET Hip Hop Awards or something, Cardi B won big, you know, we love me some Cardi B. And but the true star of that evening was Eminem. And I think it is part telling that, you know, Eminem has always been a controversial figure at BET because it's kind of like, can a white person win a BET award? Where do you fit in the world of hip hop, whether it's Iggy Azalea, the Beastie Boys, Eminem? I think there has to be a place, but I think what Eminem did last night in his Cypher and he bodied Donald Trump last night, basically, in this approximately 4-minute just rant, and it was completely political. And I admire Eminem for what he did. So I want to kind of briefly discuss a few of the verses from this Cypher. And of course, I will post a link to the complete video, but let's just start with this. And I apologize today because I will be on my phone a good bit. A lot of my notes are on the phone. Okay, so the first segment we've got, and this isn't the whole thing, these are just sort of sections. But we better give Obama props because what we got in office now is a kamikaze that'll probably cause a nuclear holocaust, and while the drama pops and he waits for shit to quiet down, he'll just gas his plane up and fly around until the bombing stops. Intensities heightened, tensions are rising. Trump, when it comes to giving a shit, you're as stingy as I am, except when it comes to having the balls to go against me, you'd hide them. This is true because Trump has not responded to the ciphers today. He's been on Twitter, but he has not responded. Because you don't got the fucking nuts like you're an empty asylum. Racism is the only thing he's fantastic for, because that's how he gets his fucking rocks off. And he's orange. Yeah, sick tan. That's why he wants to disband, because he cannot withstand. Now that's one part, moving forward. But just in there, Eminem's really expressing some rage. And I want to believe this, it was recorded on October 6th. So he goes over so many of the very recent things that have happened. And again, another segment that stood out to me. Fuck walking on eggshells, I came to stomp. That's why he keeps screaming, drain the swamp, because he's in quicksand. It's like we take a step forward, we take step forwards, then backwards, but this is his form of distraction. Plus, he gets an enormous reaction when he attacks the NFL, so we focus on that instead of talking Puerto Rico or gun reform in Nevada. All these horrible tragedies, and he's bored and would rather cause a Twitter storm with the Packers, then says he wants to lower our taxes, then who's going to pay for his extravagant trips back and forth with his fam to his golf resorts and his mansions, same shit he tormented Hillary for and he slandered, then does it more. I love that he took the time to really acknowledge the media disparity and coverage of that, if nothing else, that one line item. And this was something that was really taken out of context in the 2016 election, that Hillary Clinton had amassed all this wealth and she was this coastal elite and this person who hobnobbed with Hollywood and all this stuff. But you can see now by Trump's behavior that he was really the one that had this lavish style. Again, and you're trying to lower taxes, who's going to pay for this stuff? Moving along, there's another third segment that stood out to me, and this was right around the end. He's going to get, and Eminem embodied this sort of rednecky accent to do this part, and I'm not going to try to do that. So I'm just going to read. He's going to get rid of all immigrants. He's going to build that thing up taller than this. Well, if he does build it, I hope it's rock solid with bricks, because like him in politics, I'm using all of his tricks, because I'm throwing that piece of shit against the wall till it sticks. And any fan of mine who's a supporter of his, I'm drawing in the sand a line. You're either for or against. Key. Crucial. Okay? And if you can't decide who you like more and you're split, on who you would stand besides, I'll do it for you with this. Fuck you. The rest of America, stand up. We love our military, we love our country, but we fucking hate Trump. Yes! Yes! Now, I have to just say, this wasn't, it was late when this sort of came out. I didn't really watch the BET Awards. BET, again, when it comes to the realm of politics, is quite controversial in and of itself, because it's kind of owned by Viacom and people don't know whether they can trust the message coming out of BET. But recently, BET has been real about it with their coverage, from discussing Susan Sarandon and the Twitter sphere. Susan Sarandon, Brave Neck, that's a whole other story and discussion that also looped me in terms of putting my black ass in Twitter jail. But that's neither here nor there. So BET, I'm happy to see them taking a more forceful stand against Trump. I think that's something that's sort of late coming, because we needed more of a voice via black media specifically to go ahead and side with Democrats, or at least go ahead and condemn the GOP, and that just didn't really happen in any forceful way in 2016. So I'm happy to see, they might be late to the party, but they're here now, so that's fine. Eminem did something incredibly significant here, which is something that we've all been doing, as far as people of color, which is having to say point blank, there is no walking this line with me. You cannot be a Trump supporter and be a friend of mine. And Eminem called it flat out for those people in Michigan, where he's from, for those people in the Rust Belt, states, and to just say, you have to decide what you support. Do you support all of the military? Do you really support the country? Do you support Americans? Or do you just want to be in this world where Donald Trump trolls all of us? And, I just love that he pulled out that direct ultimatum, gave people a really clear choice. And of course, there were a lot of angry people online, specifically white people white men, who didn't like that their, champion of R&B and hip hop was now calling to question their position on politics. As soon as, a lot of times what you hear from that sphere is, oh, well, Eminem doesn't have the right to talk about politics. Okay, but yet you can hold everyone else accountable for their position in politics until it's someone holding you accountable for your politics. And Eminem finally did that. I'm sure a lot of white men have done that, but he's the first one I've seen really do it and really call his fans to be a part of his movement with calling this out. And of course, I have to say this. I've been a critic of Eminem in the past because of, I like his music, I do, but specifically because of his sort of public torment of some of my other, musical selections. I'm a big Mariah Carey fan. I'm a big Christina Aguilera fan. I have been, sometimes more than others. But I just think there's two things to be discussed. One, Eminem can have a position on politics and American politics without being subject to the same scrutiny of our politicians, because as Americans, we all have our right to express our views, and we don't have to have a clean slate. We don't have to be as prim and proper as a politician to have a political opinion. That's one. Two, I think while we have to hold people accountable for their actions, especially when they have a large broad platform, like someone like an Eminem, to be more sensitive to the messages that they put out with regard to women and gender issues, or even LGBT or race. That's important, but that's something that we all have to be mindful of, and it's something we all have to be participatory in. So that was sort of where I landed on that. Again, the link will be posted in this video. I mean, at the bottom, because I don't have no rights to be putting out that video. That one was live, and everybody watched it, and everybody covered it. So it's surprising to me that Donald Trump did not comment on that video. But one other thing that happened that's interesting, and it's kind of tying into this same discussion. We talk about hip hop, we talk about pop culture, specifically black pop culture, and that always branches into Housewives and other movies and media. And so I want to briefly discuss Terry Crews and also Wendy Williams and Nene Leakes. Now, over the weekend, everyone had been discussing the Harvey Weinstein controversy, his disgusting behavior, and there was this huge call and push to hold Democrats specifically accountable for everything Harvey Weinstein had done. Now, again, just like I said before, I didn't vote for Harvey Weinstein. He's not an elected official. So while we need to be condemning his behavior, as a Democrat, I don't take any responsibility for anything this man did, nor should Barack Obama, nor should Hillary Clinton. Now, if they want to make a comment, they can make their own comment. But to my knowledge, Hillary Clinton didn't assault those women. To my knowledge, Barack Obama didn't assault those women. Harvey Weinstein did. So if the media would just take a moment to hold those people accountable, the harassers accountable for their actions, as opposed to making it about everyone that they know because they convey a message that's anti that, I think that would be helpful in terms of mitigating the distraction. But just in terms of the culture around and dialogue with the issues of sexual assault, there were two somewhat controversial statements, and they're not necessarily related, but we witnessed Wendy Williams and both Nene Leakes this week making apologies for comments they had made regarding sexual assault. Now, Wendy Williams was discussing the young lady's responsibility to protect herself and this is the accuser of Nelly, who allegedly raped her on a tour bus. Now, like many of us who are, again, familiar with hip-hop culture and the lyrics, it's not that we're saying it's okay for you to talk about women in an objectifying way or treat them as such in your personal life. But as a fan of the music, if you're familiar with the lyrics, I think Wendy Williams' statements originally, which were basically to say, and I don't want to misquote anybody, I'm not quoting at this point, I'm just mentioning her approach. She sort of gave a spiel that said the girl who accused Nelly of raping her shouldn't have been on his tour bus anyway. She was met with a lot of backlash, and she later came back and sort of clarified and reiterated to say women should be able to go wherever they want. I agree, but you need to know where all the exits are. I agree. You also need to have your $20 bill. Now, and this is something it's not just women, You go out with people, you go out with friends, you don't know what people's intentions are. You want to be social and meet people, but I've lived in different parts of the world, and sometimes you come across people who don't always have your best intentions at heart, regardless of what they are. And you got to be able to get home on your own. You got to be able to call somebody that you know who is ready and willing to support you if you need to make a quick exit. I think that was the advice that Wendy was giving, not a condemnation of this young lady who was taken advantage of. And regardless of whether she was raped or not, she was clearly violated if she moved forward with any sort of allegation. So Nelly is going to be fully in the wrong, and we need to hold him accountable to that. Nene Leakes, separately, at a concert, she was hosting a concert, and I want to say Tiffany Haddish was there. Shout out to Tiffany from Girls Trip. Nene, I think, was getting heckled at some point by some woman who was probably white. I think this happened on the West Coast. And Nene sort of spun it later to be about she was defending herself against a racist. I don't know that I agree with that, or even that it's relevant in this case. But, you know, Nene ultimately made a joke to the woman that she had escorted out of the club as a heckler, basically to say, I hope your Uber driver rapes you on your way home. And I just think, you know, it made me feel sick when I heard it played back. It was just like, why would you say that knowing that this is something that happens? Or even the other way around. You know, Uber drivers are always victims of assault, whether it's sexual assault or otherwise. We see it all the time. So it's just something that shouldn't be joked about. And I understand we're in this housewives, hip hop, you know, pop culture, you know, society. But at some point, when you make jokes about things like that, you're somewhat exonerating the accused. You're immediately, and it's not something that we should support. So as, you know, as black people or people of color, whoever, women, whatever, everybody can do it. Now, I want to discuss Terry Crews because Terry Crews spoke out about the Harvey Weinstein case. And you've had many people speaking out about it. Some people saying what you would expect them to say, like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Meryl Streep, those types of figures. But then you've got some people like Lindsay Lohan, who comes out and says, well, he never harassed me, so y'all need to leave him alone, which is, you know, the epitome of this brand of white feminism that we frequently talk about, where if you're not personally victimized, it's not your concern, and therefore you're not going to put the energy or motivation behind a solution. That's something that needs to be challenged, and Lindsay Lohan is currently being called to the carpet. But I do want to discuss Terry Crews' thread from earlier today. And again, I apologize for the use of the phone because I have several of the notes on the phone today, more than normal. He starts, and poor Terry, Julius, don't know how to thread, but we gonna teach him, because he wrote a thread. It was about 17 tweets, and he discusses his encounter with an abuser where he was sexually harassed. And I'll read the thread for you. But Terry, I'm gonna need you to learn how to thread. Anybody out there who wants to write a thread, all you have to do, you write your first tweet, you go back to the tweet, you press reply to that tweet, and then you write your next one. And Twitter will thread it all together so that when someone pulls up that initial tweet, it pulls the whole story in front of you. So Donald Trump, you're a little challenged with that too. Not that I'm wanting you to be more affluent in Twitter speak, but hey, it would help us follow you down the rabbit hole occasionally if we choose to indulge. Without further ado, this is Terry Crews. This whole thing with Harvey Weinstein is giving me PTSD. Why? Because this kind of thing happened to me. My wife and I were at a Hollywood function last year, and a high-level Hollywood executive came over to me and groped my privates. Jumping back, I said, "What are you doing?" My wife saw everything, and we looked at him like he was crazy. He just grinned like a jerk. I was going to kick his ass right then, but I thought twice about it, about how the whole thing would appear. 240-pound black man stomps out Hollywood honcho would be the headline the next day. Only I probably wouldn't have been able to read it because I would have been in jail. So we left. That night and the next day, I talked to everyone I knew that worked with him about what happened. He called me the next day with an apology, but never really explained why he did what he did. I decided not to take it further because I didn't want to be ostracized. Par for the course when the predator has power and influence. I let it go. And I understand why many women who this happens to let it go. Who's going to believe you? Few. What are the repercussions? Many. Do you want to work again? Yes. Are you prepared to be ostracized? No. I love what I do, but it's a shame and the height of disappointment when someone tries to take advantage of that. He knows who he is, but sometimes you have to wait and compare notes with others who have been victimized in order to gain a position of strength. That was key. I understand and empathize with those who have remained silent, but Harvey Weinstein is not the only predator. Hollywood is not the only business where this happens. And to the casualties of this behavior, you are not alone. Hopefully, me coming forward with my story will deter a predator and encourage someone else who feels helpless. I think there might have been one more tweet with that, but the whole point is that as men, I think men have a fine line and responsibility to walk within this discussion, right? First of all, don't harass anybody. That's the starting point. But then the second thing is listen to those who claim they've been abused or harassed. Another thing is that if you know that you've heard other, stories of this or it's come up before, you can be a catalyst to bring about that discussion in a small group where Terry talks about, you got to compare notes. You got to kind of discuss and pull together a group because, that's unfortunately where we are and where a lot of women find themselves when it comes to this particular situation. So I would say thank you to Terry Crews. Nene Leakes and Wendy Williams both apologized. Thank you to them. And it does, sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you miss the mark. But, so those were two, major things I want to talk about. The next thing is a little more local. In Atlanta, our mayor, Kasim Reed, now I signed a marijuana ordinance into law today. Now, what's important about this law is that it mitigates what used to be a max penalty of $1,000 and up to 6 months in jail if you were found in possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana in the city of Atlanta. You could face a $1,000 fine and up to 6 months in jail. Now, this new law that works only inside of the city of Atlanta, keep in mind weed is still illegal in Georgia, but you can only be fined at max $75 for having less than 1 ounce of marijuana on you. And you cannot face jail time for a possession charge. Now, up until this point, 90% of the people in jail on possession charges from the city of Atlanta had been African Americans. Not people of color, African Americans. And this kind of brings us to this greater discussion. And obviously this is political because yesterday was the last day to register to vote in the Atlanta and be considered for the Atlanta mayor's race, which happens on Election Day, which is the first Tuesday of next month. And of course, there's a cast of characters vying for this spot. Kasim Reed has reached his term limit, so thankfully he will not be pursuing another term. And devotees will understand why I have certain issues with Kasim Reed, even though he's not completely terrible. I just think he's stale, and it's time for him to go. But he did sign this legislation into order, so thank you for that, Mayor Kasim Reed. And it does not go unnoticed that one of the candidates for mayor in Atlanta, Kwanzaa Hall, is the I think city councilman who brought this legislation up to a vote. He brought it and introduced the legislation in March of this year, and it just got signed into law. So let's give credit where credit is due. What I'm not going to do is give credit to somebody else. So Killer Mike, who's obviously a proponent of, well, let's not even say that. I don't know where Killer Mike stands on weed. I'm not going to make any assumptions because he's a rapper. But what I don't like is that we've got an important mayor's race that impacts my life and the life of other taxpayers and citizens who've lived in Atlanta. I was born in Atlanta. I was born in the city of Atlanta. I live in the city of Atlanta. I own a business in the city of Atlanta. Most of my supporters are in the city of Atlanta. Maybe not viewers per se, because I don't really go local very often, but that's my reality. And so it does frustrate me when outsiders like a Bernie Sanders comes in and makes endorsements on candidates in a mayor's race. It's kind of like, I don't know how connected you are to my issues. We haven't talked. You don't seem to be very representative of those issues. And then you have someone who has weight in the community like a Killer Mike, who last year was on the radio telling people not to vote for Hot Sauce Hillary, and is now telling people to vote for Vincent Fort, who I think his name is Vincent. I just wrote down last names. So in the race, we've got Fort, who is sponsored by Our Revolution, Bernie Sanders, and the DSA. Now, you know I don't fuck with Bernie Sanders. I don't fuck with Our Revolution. I don't fuck with the DSA at all. I'm not going to. I think they are harassers. I think they're racist. I think they're misogynists. In many cases, I think they're homophobic. They're not my type of motherfuckers. So I'm not going to support a candidate that they support. Thank you, Killer Mike, for promoting the idea that you support Fort for Atlanta, because now I know I don't have to consider this person. Fort's crossed off the list. Now, I also thought it was interesting that Killer Mike, who a big voice in hip-hop in Atlanta, in that scene, now goes online, I want to say it was Instagram or Twitter, to thank Mayor Kasim Reed and his candidate, Fort, for bringing about this legislation. And it's kind of like, this is where I have a problem with that whole side, where, you know, if you don't have the accolades on your belt, it's okay to not discuss that particular award. Just don't say anything. If you can't give credit where it's due, Killer Mike, to Councilman Kwanzaa Hall, who introduced the legislation, to Mayor Kasim Reed, who signed it into law, and Mayor Kasim Reed gave immediate credit to Councilman Kwanzaa Hall, and he also gave credit to Keisha Lance Bottoms, who's another candidate who maybe has a little bit of a licentious relationship with Mayor Kasim Reed. You didn't hear that from me. I'm just throwing it out there. They're close. So I don't know how much Keisha Lance Bottoms had to do with this particular win for the progressive movement. But I will say that Kwanzaa Hall gets the check mark in my box. I don't know why Killer Mike is giving his candidate Fort a check mark for this particular legislation. And it's frustrating and confusing when you have, you know, a group of people who are following sort of blindly messages from people that they trust, who are ultimately lying to them. So I'd ask Killer Mike to stop lying about politics so that he can promote candidates as he's, you know, required to do by whatever contract he has with Bernie Sanders or Our Revolution. It really is sort of despicable and distasteful to continue to keep up these sort of charades about what's actually going on, because you can't give Fort credit for making it a campaign issue in the mayor's race when Kwanzaa Hall introduced this before people even submitted their applications for mayor. Do you understand what I'm saying? Are we clear? So I don't want to see any more tweets about that and this particular issue. Let Fort's record stand on its own. And another thing I didn't like about Fort, I might be going over time here, but another thing I didn't like about Fort was that you've got somebody, I'm looking at the last 2 weeks of tweets of yours. You haven't really mentioned Puerto Rico. You mentioned Las Vegas only in as much as you had a video on your feed by some white lady talking about why Las Vegas wasn't the most deadly massacre and one that occurred was actually just against black people. That's fine, Black history lesson. But some things ain't the right moment. Some discussions need to be left to talking about gun rights advocacy, which I really didn't see on your page, because that doesn't gel with Bernie Sanders' agenda. So you can't talk about gun rights in any forceful way because you're supported by Bernie Sanders. But 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, when my front door was shot out, that discussion of people having access to guns who shouldn't have them would have helped me and the people in my building be safer. So this is where we have a disconnect, because you don't live here, you don't understand our lived experiences and what we're afraid of, and yet you're promoting these ideas by people who clearly don't care. What do I care about? I care about the CHIP program, which was just defunded. Did I see anything about the CHIP program on Fort's page? No, I did not. What I did see was multiple retweets from Bernie Sanders' campaign and Bernie Sanders' page about Bernie Sanders' tour to promote free college, free in-state tuition for undergrads, which I think is sort of wasteful when you're running for mayor in a city that's within a state that offers a Hope Scholarship to anyone who gets above a 3.0. Georgia was actually ahead of the curve, and yes, Georgia has backslid in terms of providing the Hope Scholarship from the times that I had the Hope Scholarship when I had it briefly. I just think it's really important to be truthful and look at people's intentions. So I've been invited to a bunch of mayors, forums and candidates, and to like candidate forums and people speak. And I'm not even listening to what anybody says. I'm not listening to what people say about people or say about candidates. I'm gonna let the information come out. I'm gonna see what sticks. I'm gonna see what people respond to. And I'm gonna see what your Twitter feeds talk about. See what you're passionate about. I know by looking at Fort's page, I'm not supportive of his. Mary Norwood, aka the Buckhead Betty of Atlanta, I'm looking at the DSA and who they're supporting and our revolution and who they're supporting in Atlanta. They're supporting this rich-ass aristocratic white lady who is married into wealth, probably had her own wealth at some point, has stated in public that she doesn't really believe that, not racial discrimination, but racial profiling is an issue in Atlanta. And as a black man living in Atlanta, I know that racial profiling is an issue in Atlanta. So let's cross Mary Norwood off. Keisha Last Bottoms, I like your ads. I like that you're a mom, you're a family person. That's great. I don't know much else about you. And then there's Caesar Mitchell, who my barbershop has endorsed effectively. And that would be enough to make me not support you, because I just recently left the barbershop that was talking nonsense about supporting Trump. So when it comes to black men and barbers necessarily, that's not automatic for me. I'm probably going to discount you to some extent because you're endorsed by a barbershop. So right now I'm leaning a little bit towards Kwanzaa Hall. I don't know that for sure. Right now, there's rumors swirling around that people have like impropriety when it comes to money. Again, our revolution and the DSA has stated that Fort was their number one choice and that Mary Norwood was their first choice, but solely for the fact that she's self-funded. Not because she has any particularly good policies, not because of anything that benefits me or provides a better or more progressive existence in the city of Atlanta for me. I'm not seeing legislation that would allow me and my friends to have a better time or be less worried about spending 6 months in jail for having less than an ounce of weed on us. Or if I'm riding around in a car with somebody, one of my friends who might happen to have less than an ounce of weed on them, and now as the driver, I'm responsible and I got to spend my black ass 6 months in jail because of something they had on them and might not even know they had on them. I'm just saying, that's where we are with this. And so I have not made an endorsement. I'm still asking around. There's a forum tonight at Georgia Tech. I will not be in attendance because I don't even really care to hear what they have to say. I'll wait and let's see what sticks. But again, I'm going to be looking for who's endorsing you. And if you get endorsed by Bernie Sanders, if you get endorsed by the DSA, if you get endorsed by the same groups that have been harassing me online for the last 2 years, please believe I'm publicly stating that Fort is crossed off my list. And so is Mary Norwood. So you have a nice day. Speaking of a nice day, I would like to, as always, thank our friends of the show today. And this is anyone who has given or donated $1 or more to the link above, paypal.me/JKH2, or supported via the Amazon wishlist. Those friends are MLH. Sometimes people just give initials and I don't say last names. So if it comes across as initials as your first name and a full last name, I'm still not going to say your last name. So MLH, Elizabeth W, Gabrielle D, thank you. You're one of the first supporters. Thank you so much for your continued support. Douglas A, thank you for your continued support. Elizabeth W was a continued supporter. Kelly B, continued supporter. Joseph R, another continual supporter. And Barry G, another continual supporter. So everyone who supported this week has donated pretty much either weekly or monthly to the cast. And sometimes it's $5, sometimes it's $100, sometimes it's anything, but everything is appreciated. Helps me buy coffee, helps me buy lights, mics, batteries, all kinds of stuff to help make this go more smoothly. So there's a lot going on in our world. I invite you to keep your eyes open. Pay attention to your local politics in this coming election day. I'll be discussing Atlanta politics a little more closely just because we're in Atlanta, but that shouldn't discourage you from watching and also delving more into your own local politics wherever they may lead you. With that, I'd like to ask you to relax, relate, and resist. Thanks. In Atlanta, our mayor,